know.
Right.
So, can we make this like a little bit larger?
I can
Of
try.
the resolution? I suppose it's.
Yeah, I can try. That's
No, it's okay.
What?
Not at all.
So you're talking to me?
Why bother at that point?
Picture size?
Maybe it can be a good.
Yeah, maybe I just need to maximize.
Yeah.
You just need to know how to present for the subcommittee. Yeah, there you go.
It's a little bit. It's a little bigger.
Yeah, that helps. Okay, so I recommend that everyone like kind of come around so that you could see the television. Oh, and if we could, Leah hasn't started recording yet.
Yeah,
she is.
Okay.
if she could point, have that on it though.
And if we could just go around and do quick introductions. She just walked out.
I'm sitting,
Pick it up.
so.
Me?
Yeah.
Until I get back. Hi, I'm Tara. I live in the neighborhood. I'm a community board member and I'm very interested in the land use zoning, city of yes, and the work that's gonna be done here and the data particularly that I hope Cindy's gonna present tonight.
Okay, so I'm Tara's a member of the Environment Committee.
Environment
Are we
That's
introducing
it, we're
ourselves?
introducing
Oh, okay.
ourselves.
I'm Vanessa Raptopoulos, the chair of economic development. I'm here because I got here when we were talking about the economic development portion, and now I'm still here.
Just doing the subcommittee.
Stay
because
going.
She's very hardworking.
Yeah, just didn't have enough to
Alicia?
What is
Oh,
it?
we're doing introductions.
boy, political activist.
Needs no introduction. Good job.
John Craver, I'm a committee, a member of the ULIP committee as a community member.
Okay.
Nicola Cox, community member of the land use committee.
Regina Clark, resident community member of the Economic Development Committee, and here I am still doing the one CBS committee.
Jolie, new member, and just checking out the other committees.
Great.
Ethan, remember transportation.
Super. Okay, and I'm Suki Cheong. I'm the chair of the Land Use Committee. And so this is our subcommittee meeting on the City of Yes for housing opportunity. So this is going to be our last meeting before the 60-day review period expires for these citywide zoning text amendments. So we're going to kind of review some of the things that we've talked about and try to summarize them, try to present some of the data in a clearer way. And then we'll take up our draft resolution, which we had written some stuff last time about universal affordability, and so we'll take that up and also add some comments about the medium and low density proposals. So just, rules of order, we're a little bit more informal here, but if you could please raise your hands, because sometimes everybody tends to talk at once and then nobody can be heard. So just, kind of raise your hand. And so just, if you could bear with me, I'm gonna, go ahead, Nicola.
I'm just trying to keep us, I have tight time tonight.
Okay.
So how long do you want this section to be, and then how much time do we want to allocate to the actual?
So we'll take about 15 or 20 minutes for the presentation, and it'll be faster if people can hold questions until afterwards. And then we'll, spend the rest of the time, on the resolution. A big part of this proposal, the part that's going to affect Community District 9 the most, is the universal affordability preference. So to understand what that is, need to look, understand Community District 9's zoning. So this is a map of the whole of Community District 9, and what I really want you all to notice is how large the areas are that are covered by R6 and R7. We certainly do have zones that are covered by R2, R4, and R5, but really the majority of the land area is covered by the R6 and the R7 zones, and none of them have letters after them, and again, you'll see why that's important. Okay, so. I'll also email it to you guys.
What do you mean?
For the public.
Oh, you know what? I don't know.
remove that.
I don't know if you wheel it this way or something, but that maybe.
Yeah, that might.
Angle it.
Or even just put it right there. I mean, it's more important people see.
Yeah. See that than us.
Looking at it.
I'll just wheel it over there. Yeah. I think it's gonna have to be over yonder. No. I think I'm gonna have to come behind you, Alicia. Thank you very much.
You started.
Fair statement. That was your wave goodbye.
Yeah, look, right.
Yeah, that's a good look.
Or maybe closer.
Oh. No, look at that. I don't know if that helps. It's not that.
Maybe if Nicola move over just
And it's also back flipped, so I don't know if that's gonna work.
Oh, it's backwards?
Yeah. I think you'd have to actually get on and like do it that way.
Why?
It's mirroring.
What do you think?
Yeah.
I'll move it, you go.
I'm not sure we can
Can we move the box?
Yeah.
Like, can we move the box over to here?
It doesn't matter.
No, it's not gonna yeah,
It's mirroring.
yeah,
I'm not sure we can unmirror on live stream.
yeah.
I think there's a way to edit a live stream after you upload it and put those things in.
I mean, honestly, it's fine. I think we just gotta.
Put it down.
Or I'll just. I mean, sure, I guess so.
Well, at least we tried.
I think so. A for effort.
That's to me.
Is there a way to, or just share your PowerPoint? You have to beam it, or like maybe go live from, I think, her computer.
We literally just have to cover
Angle.
Right, maybe you can just move it and move that a little bit.
Yeah, I just need you to stand
No,
really quickly.
it's a mirror, it's a mirror.
Not a great spot, right?
Oh, yeah. You know what, I'm just gonna put it here for the rest of the night, because it can get the angle of the committee. We just, people just have to be able to see you guys, not necessarily, have a bird's eye.
Okay, that's good.
No, that's me. No.
No? Miss Wester, doll.
Well,
There you go.
Put it on the committee.
There we are. No, that's good stuff, you're good.
I thought the problem was that
Yeah.
it was it's mirrored.
Yeah.
They're not gonna be,
they can't read it. Oh, and this, so, I mean,
Drop a link.
okay.
The remote people and us were.
Is anyone calling?
What do you think?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Is anyone on there? One person.
Yeah,
Live
but people
directly
will watch
on
the
her,
recording.
share her screen, and then that would be good.
One person.
Okay.
Well,
But they gotta look later. I look at these things later. So.
oh,
Yeah.
so it's
Exactly.
backwards on the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh darn it.
I know, that's a big bummer.
Why?
But I mean, as long as
Can we
you're speaking
switch
to those
cameras?
key points, I feel like.
camera?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Or no, it doesn't work that way for,
I mean, you can try, but I mean, I don't know.
like,
Do you want to spend 5 hours with
I
for a
know.
PowerPoint visual, or do you want to actually just summarize the key points for people?
wait.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say if you just.
that's right.
Camera.
Okay, hold on,
Okay.
let me get it propped up.
Can we just move it to the table? It's the screen, right?
No,
You could
it's
flip
good.
it the other way so the camera's on top, right?
I mean, it's seeing it.
I mean,
But
I mean,
the camera's here.
Oh, but it looks fine. When you look, come look. See, it seems fine.
Tech savvy people on this committee.
We can just.
Not know what to do.
Or stand it up and put it on the
Still
table.
waiting for you to step back.
No, now it's,
Flipping it?
But
No,
what, can you
now
stand
it's
it?
upside down.
It's not rotating with the thing, yeah, you
Yeah.
gotta have to say.
Weird. I can keep it.
That's gonna, you're gonna catch all.
This is good.
See if we can get it in.
There we go, yep.
Is that better?
Okay,
Perfect.
perfect, okay, I'm gonna fly through this, cause I think most of you have seen
Make sure I'm
this
not in it.
before.
You're not.
But the UAP zoning increases are absolutely not uniform, despite the fact that they've been saying that it's just a little bit everywhere, right? So you can see with the R6B zone, it goes from a base of 2.0 to 2.4 maximum floor area for the affordable. But in an R6, unrestricted zone, which is what we have, it can go from a base of 2.2 on a narrow street, which is where most people live. Those are the side streets. That's where all of the smaller homes are, to 3.9. So that's a 60% increase. The same is true with the R7s. With the R7.1 and R7.2, the 3 point, which isn't as common as the R6, but it still exists in many parts of our district, and it covers many areas that have small 2 and 3 story buildings. It can go from a 3.44 to a 5.0, which is a 50% increase. And at the R8A level, which we have a little bit of, and it's important because it covers a lot of large apartment buildings, there is a 20% increase. And that's an issue because the existing buildings are so underbuilt to that R8A zone. It doesn't fit the R8A zone closely the way it does in most other districts that have been rezoned. Okay, so what else is being changed? Dwelling unit factors. So dwelling unit factors are something that controls how many dwelling units you can build. And at lower density districts currently, it's controlled by the size of the building. So for example, in an R2 zone, you can only have like the size of the building divided by 1900. So that's 1 or 2 units. This is completely, and generally, and in an R6 through an R10 zone, they have to add the dwelling units have to average 680 square feet. So you basically have to have a mix of different types of apartment sizes. You really, you could have all 1 bedroom, but you really can't have all studios. However, that's being eliminated in what they call the inner transit zone. And we are in the inner transit zone. That's something that was determined under the MIH ZQA amendments. Okay, so there are some areas that are actually close to transit that weren't in the inner transit zone, and they're not being affected by this as much, but they're still being affected by it somewhat. UAP is setting, so UAP isn't an as of right density increase. They have to give affordable housing in exchange for this density increase. And they've decided that the affordability is going to be permanent at 60% of AMI, and that'll be an average, so they can have different income bands. They can have some below 60%, some at 60%, some above 60%. It has to average to 60% of AMI. And so for a family of 3, you can see here, that's 83,880 for 1 person, that's 65,220. And that translates to, for this 1 person, this studio size, that translates to a studio rent of $1,630. That was in answer to a question that somebody was asking at the public session. And you'll see why that becomes very key later on, along with the dwelling unit factor that allows you to have all studios. So
I'm sorry, Suki, what would the rent be for that?
$1,630
For the one
studio.
$1,630? So they're paying 1/3 of their rent?
Yep. That's how it works. It's
Or
30% of your income
Post-tax.
goes to rent.
Exactly.
It's all post-tax.
It's
So-
post-tax.
How does this compare to what Community District 9 has? So of course, this data is from the Equitable Development Data Explorer from 2021. We probably have some more updated data now, but okay. According to that, our median household income is $65,551. So, and the median household size is about 2.5, 3 people. So you can see that that is below the level that's being set for 2024. And we have about 23% that are actually below 30% of AMI, so it's very low income, and another 14% that is between 30 and 50% of AMI. So this is almost 40% that's actually below 50% of AMI. So that 60%, as we discussed in previous sessions, that 60% of AMI level is at best sort of middle class. It's not really affordable housing for the people that need it, and for the categories where there's a shortage, as people have pointed out before. Okay, so just some examples, and bear with me as I go through the math. I'm only going to do it once for this example. So there was a lot of contention about whether this UAP bonus would really lead to additional demolitions or development activity over and above the as of right, which of course is happening a lot in our district already. So this is an example of President Street. This is a block where there's already been some knockdowns on the larger lots to build up condos. So as you can see, under the as of right, these are, and I'm going with this example first because I consider it to be sort of the most borderline, because this is a part of the district that's very pricey. A townhouse in 2022 sold for this small little townhouse sold for $2.3 million, and that's probably like some of the highest pricing in the
So
district.
this is president between what and what?
Exactly.
I think it's probably between like Washington and Bedford.
That makes sense.
So
that
this
is
is-
like
That the president, I would, yeah.
So this is a small house, it's 1,740 square feet. Under the R6, he's allowed to go up to 5,300, which is a lot, but it's really not nearly enough for him to demolish. And part of the reason is because when you look at the price versus the amount of square feet you can build, the price per buildable square foot, which I understand is really what developers look at, am I right, Mr. Architect, is quite high. It's $434 a square foot. And, there's been, sort of industry press saying that the developers are, for mixed income housing, they're really targeting the $200 to $260 per buildable square foot level. And you can see that with UAP, that amount increases by 60%, and you get to 8,500 square feet, of which 3,200 would have to be at the income restricted level. And so you could do, let's say, 15 one-bedrooms here, with 8,500 square feet, if they're each, 550 square feet. So with this new number of buildable square feet, the price per square foot comes all the way down to 270. So that's borderline, right? So let's see, if this works. And so I've always understood that the cost to build extra interior floors, which John Wolfling calls the incremental cost of building, is about $200 per square foot. And stop me if I'm saying anything unreasonable, John. The cost of a foundation without a garage, and this is another key point, no parking mandates, is about $75 a square foot. So given the foundation size and the FAR, that translates to about an extra $20 per built square foot. So then it also takes them a while to build. They have to pay for this they have to pay interest on a construction loan. This is a smaller building, it might only be 3 years instead of, 5 for a massive building. So, we're adding an extra 20% to all that. Okay, so if we look at, you know, a 550 square foot one bedroom, if we assume they want to earn, you know, an 8% return on capital minimum, because, you know, today mortgage rates are at 7%, they want to be above that. Then the rent plus, let's say, $300 a month in maintenance, plus no property taxes. Remember, 485W just passed, right? That comes to about $24.75 a month is what they need to earn. So in this area, the market rate rents for one bedrooms are about $3,000 to $3,500 a month. You know, as a matter of fact, you can look at the market rate building at the Bedford Union Armory, and they're on the high end. The one bedrooms are asking about $3,500 a month. The affordable has to be $1,730 a month. So if you look at the average of, you know, about 40% of the units having to be affordable and about 60% being market rate, the average of all the apartments, he gets about $2,517. So the $2,517 is above his required return on capital. That said, you know, I think this is a little bit borderline because it does require that we're hitting, like, you know, kind of in the middle, at least in the middle of this range for market rents, and, you know, whatever, the market might be weak, or you know, and also, you know, what we've always wondered is if, well, he can build luxury condos and he's getting 1,000, you know, like he's getting $1 million for a 2-bedroom condo, that's way more profitable than sitting around earning 8% a year. Why would he do that? And so, you know, we think in a weaker market, they might not demolish, they might default to just adding additions on top of the building because that's cheaper. They don't have to, you know, demolish and build a foundation. So that kind of thing can happen. And you'll see some pictures later of where this sort of thing actually did happen. But here's something else I want to show you. If he were to build all studios, and this is a key thing because they're eliminating the dwelling unit factor to allow it, right? Now it's actually very easy for them to hit these targets because they're actually coming in at a price that's below, you know, for all their units, they're actually coming in at a price that is well below the affordable studio requirement of $1,630 a month. So this is a pretty profitable model if you can do all studios, which is not something that would be allowed now, and that could lead to a demolition. And
But it will be allowed in the city of Yes.
yes, and so, you know, I mean, like I said, I think what's likely to happen is in a strong market, it'll default to what's happening today, which is the luxury, you know, homes being knocked down and replaced by luxury condos. In a weak market, we'll go towards, you know, the additions on top of the buildings for rentals, or the demolition and the all studio building. Okay,
But
so
in either case, the people that are in the building now are gonna be gone.
they're gone. That's right. You know, these were 2-family houses. So somebody asked me at the community fair, and what happened to the tenants who live there? Where can they go? Are they given something? And the answer is no. And you know, like I said, it's realistically it takes 3 years for the construction process. The owner's going to empty the building first, get permits, you know, do construction, lease up. Even if they can get back in through the lottery, they'll be competing with the entire rest of the city now because we don't have much of a community preference left. And it's going to be years before, you know, they can get back into the affordable housing.
Or they can play out like 1180 President. 1180 President, the owner attempted to empty out the building. 3 families stayed. He was able to move the majority building out, but
Right.
3 families stayed. So when he or she reopened the building back up, they were able to move to a lower apartment because by then the father needed to be closer to the ground, but they ended up with their apartment because it was rent stabilized. They were able to, right? So one of the things that could put debacle, used to use a cartoon term, is if those people know what their rights are and they're strong enough to stick with them.
It's
Yeah,
only
it's-
like for
it's-
5 apartments and up for rent
Assuming it's
stabilized.
rent stabilized, I mean,
It's
these are
only
just
5 and up.
2-family houses.
And
They
also
wouldn't
rent
have-
Like, how big are these?
Two.
Man.
2-family houses.
2 and 1.
These are
Yeah,
2-family
it's
houses.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right, I forgot.
Yeah,
I was
my-
thinking about
like-
multiple family done, right, I'm sorry.
It can only be
Sorry.
stabilized if it's 5
If it's
and
6
up.
apartments, oh,
Six.
right.
6.
And then don't
6?
forget, the
Okay.
demolition of a building is a loophole to destabilize, and they do have to
Yes.
provide for the tenants, but, you
They
know,
don't have to bring
they
them
don't have
back.
to bring them back. Okay, so I'll just, breeze through these examples, cause they're all pretty similar, but, Sullivan Street, we would see most of these lots demolished. Washington Avenue, these are 4-story apartment buildings. This is one that's 40 units, it's almost 30,000 square feet. But under the existing R8A zoning, it's allowed to build 67,000 square feet, so that's a lot. It's already 2.3 times greater that you can build than is already built. Not quite enough to demolish, probably, but we have seen attempts to add a lot of stories on top of occupied buildings, which the tenants have to go to court to stop.
Yeah, they can't do that in Washington, they tried it.
Can you go back
Because of
one
the asbestos.
slide before?
That's not a possibility at this point. They tried that, but it's not a possibility.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that the folks on Sullivan Street are familiar with what's going on there.
Yeah.
So under UAP, they now get to a 7.2, which is 80,000 square feet. Okay, so now you have 2.8 times greater than built, and this is really getting to the point where it might be worth it for them to demolish, particularly because it's a loophole for destabilizing the building. So
And also
basically-
the issue with that is that it's right against the Book of Botanic Gardens. And so that would have a tremendous negative effect upon that because of the shadow impact.
It absolutely would, and really, we are talking about all of Washington Avenue, all of the
Yes.
Washington Avenue apartment buildings that are under threat. Okay, so just to go to East Flatbush, this house is on Midwood Street, again, small house, normal sized lot, under the R6 zoning, not quite, it's a lot, they have a lot of extra FAR, not quite enough to demolish. But under UAP, now the buildable price per square foot comes all the way down to $119. And so even though market rate rents in this part of the district are lower, they can still, manage to do all 1-bedrooms, and they can do, they can make their 8% return on capital by demolishing and building up a much bigger building, even with the affordable. So,
I have a question.
yeah,
I
Why,
thought you were holding questions.
why are we, sorry,
yeah, I'm
I didn't
supposed
hear
to
the
be-
holding question,
okay.
but now
Okay.
I'm started. We're talking about 1-bedrooms when the majority of the people who are homeless are children?
Well, so they're not
They
required,
don't
because of the elimination of the dwelling unit factor, they're not required to put
They
in
would not be
family-sized units. And usually, like when I looked at the numbers, typically of what 1-bedrooms rent for in this area and studios versus 2-bedrooms, the 1-bedrooms and studios are just by far the most profitable. The 2-bedrooms are really not that profitable, so they're not gonna do them if they
That's why
have
they
the
don't build them.
choice.
Right.
And those
Um,
SRO types are even more profitable. I read that they're
Yeah.
moving towards those now.
Absolutely.
Well, it would if they passed it.
So, again, this is just one particular house to try to illustrate how this works. But really, we're talking about the entire block being demolished, because this is an entire block of nice little one-family homes.
And like, yeah, by me, it's already occurring, and they're,
Mhm.
what they're doing is also
Mhm.
taking back the backyards and
Mhm.
building, being able to put more up. So it's already happening, but obviously it'll be
It'll get
exponentially
worse.
with
It'll
what the
get
point that you're
worse.
making.
Okay, so now we get to NYCHA.
But it's not just nature, it's all large scale.
It-
That would
it
be Evans
is.
as well as to the
It
towers.
is all large scale. And so again, this was already underbuilt to the a little bit to the R6 zoning. And under the UAP, it would allow a significant amount of extra square feet, like over 270,000 extra square feet. So they could add another 165 units, and we know they're doing this a lot pushing to do this a lot in NYCHA to infill the campuses. But, obviously they're gonna lose their parking lot here, cause, where else would you put another building? So basically what I was told by city planning after the meeting is, yes, the NYCHA infill is an intended target, and I said, isn't there already a process by which they're doing this? He said, yes, they can do this by mayoral zoning override, but we don't, the developers don't wanna bother with it because it takes 2 years to go through all the necessary legal documentation from court counsel and everything. So they just wanna be able to do it as of right so they can get affordable units as quickly as possible. But we promise there will still be a robust consultation process. So,
Yes, but also don't forget, with the other, outside of NYCHA, with the other large-scale development projects, the infills do not have to have universal affordability. It's not connected. It's not connected.
Yeah, so that is.
So that's the problem. So you can get another building on Tivoli Towers, you could get another 5 buildings in Ebbets Field with the infill and have no universal affordability attached to it.
Yeah, so that's
So
another sort
Really?
of,
Yes, really.
They're gonna put more buildings in.
This is called an infill, and it's only for large-scale development, not just NYCHA. Everybody's
And it-
focusing on NYCHA, and
and
nobody's
I-
paying attention to
Oh my
everything else.
And when they're talking about that, this is the, oh no, hell, that's not either. That's out.
They're already.
But another thing that's not being spoken about is they're closing off streets for free spaces, but they're putting buildings in NYCHA's playground.
Mm-hmm.
They're not talking about that. So, we need more free, even where we are. Look,
Right.
look at the streets that are being closed. Even right now, President and Class in, they're talking about DOT closing it off, and there's Ronald McNair right there.
yeah.
What for? What? Yes, Ronald McNair is right there.
Closing it off.
Yes. Okay, you get me sidetracked.
So,
So,
alright, so let's,
but they're gonna close off Black people's, and let's say for what it is, guys, regardless of how uncomfortable it makes all of us feel. Let's say for what it is, because until we start to speak truth, nobody's gonna listen. So it's okay to close off Black people's playground, because the majority of people in NYCHA look like me. It's okay to plop a building on their playground and where their kids are gonna play, but you're closing off streets that are next to parks. Over by us on Franklin, you have Botanical Garden, Prospect Park, but yet we needed more free space. It was a hazard there. Anybody that doesn't see that this is a racial issue, I'm sorry. You have shades on and you're blind.
yeah.
But it's also like Stuyvesant, that huge development in Manhattan that also got out of Manhattan.
It is certainly.
Right, that is a huge
Yeah.
development project. It will just have an enormous amount of
And they need
infill.
the green spaces in
And
it.
there would be there would be no
They're-
universal affordability.
They're certainly looking to increase density everywhere
Yes,
they can.
yes,
And
yes.
you're not housing families. That's the next thing.
Yeah.
Everywhere you look, you're talking about the numbers that you give as children are the highest number of people who are homeless. But yet these buildings that you're building, they're not housing them.
No, they're not.
Well, the
So-
plan is not to.
I'll just get through the rest of the presentation quickly. Another example, Winthrop Street, Prospect Lefferts Gardens, another townhouse. This one, the price is $2 million. That seems high, but still, with the UAP, they're getting almost 9,500 square feet, and it will be demolished.
Or it could be sold.
You know, to the extent that the market is kind of borderline, you're gonna continue to get this kind of thing as of right. Okay, let's go to the northeast part of the district, Lamont Court. This is a section of the district, folks. This is a section of the district where we have small homes in R7 zoning. Okay, so demolitions of these homes are already happening. You can see, like that townhouse, those two townhouses have become a development lot. Likewise, people are doing very large additions to their homes. And with UAP, this addition is likely to be pushed over once again into a demo. The land cost comes all the way down to $105 per square foot. And here, even a 2-bedroom, even if you're thinking about 2 bedrooms, they can make this work. Is it pressing?
For context, are these prices sold? That's what the,
Yes.
so just for context, I'm just thinking, because if they're development like, they're okay with spending more than the average person who's looking for a home, because some of these feel, like you're saying, high, and they're putting up 2 developments, so they can afford to spend more on a home, so they're driving up the cost
They
of home.
are.
That's all
They
the comment,
definitely
but-
are. They definitely are. I mean, nobody is saying that homes these days are cheap, but they're going to be way more expensive with all of this development pressure. So parking mandates. The current rules, you know what, actually I'll skip to the end on this. Okay, so city planning keeps talking about a little bit more housing everywhere. So how much housing will it actually add in CB9? We've had comments saying we didn't all start in the same place. Have we done our fair share? How much would City of Yes add citywide? And so the answer that we're getting is very different than what city planning is telling us. I think city planning told us at the last meeting that they expected something like 700 units over 15 years.
Round it to 800. Just round it to 800.
Yeah.
Seven seventy, it was
Which
770.
Yeah.
we know,
Over
just
15 years.
just the demolition of the Washington Avenue apartment buildings alone would create that much. And you guys can all see from the examples how many units these would create. These would be 16, 24-unit, 1-bedroom and studio buildings across an entire block. And, you know, I actually downloaded the data for the entire district, and it's, you know, you can look through it, but you can just imagine that
Did you
it's a
make-
Well,
tremendous
where's the
amount.
data
It's a
at this?
tremendous
Where's the
amount.
data for this?
So the data for this comes from the city's
I mean,
databases.
do you have the
yes.
data?
It comes from the city's databases like Pluto and so on, and we can talk about that later.
Well, do you have the data?
Yes,
Can you
but
give it
currently,
to us so we
well,
can see it?
well, not right now, Alicia. We'll talk about it later. But right now, we have to put this in context, we have about 43,000 units of housing. Under the current zoning, on just the as-of-right additions, we could add about 23,000 units. So there's already a huge as-of-right capacity hanging out there. With the UAP upzoning, we could potentially add 45,000 units. So the UAP is adding, it's essentially doubling the as-of-right capacity. And
Makes sense, because
so under the as-of-right, we would probably see about something like 2,300 buildings demolished, but about 5,000 could be demolished under the UAP upzoning. And that would be most of the homes that are not landmarked. I did eliminate I didn't really consider any of the landmark districts, even though there are significant issues there with, you know, they would get upzoned too, and there would be a lot of issues with air rights transfer.
I mean, I think that that's a very important issue, is because even on the low end, you can also do the air transfer, not just with the landmark, but just from moving from the mid blocks to the corridors. That's also being considered.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll see an example of some of that later on. Where are we in terms of housing production citywide? We're not one of the top 9 districts that the mayor likes to talk about. It's all the usual, you know, the people that we all know, the downtown Brooklyn, Greenpoint, Williamsburg, Chelsea, Long Island City, etc. And here's Bushwick. We're actually right in the middle. We're ringing at number 33. We've done 4,000 units of housing. There's lots of other districts in this range too. And you know, the bottom 9 districts, some of them have done very, very few units of housing. And there's various.
Go back.
And that's,
Over 13
you're talking
years.
about in Cupid.
Oh, the next slide, I think you're gonna cover
Brooklyn,
right.
it's Community Board 1, okay.
So CB9, 3,000, it seems like there's more than that coming right now in all these developments?
Yeah, so we've done about 4,000 through 2023.
Through 2023.
And in the pipeline now, we have about 2,500, and I didn't count.
2,500?
Yeah, and I didn't count like Kingsborough Psych, because that's still pending. It doesn't really show up. Which, as we know, is going to be like 1,000 units.
So the concept around like downtown Brooklyn and some of the, it's like not affordable. I think you're going to the next slide potentially. So it's like, sure, they have growth, but you know, they're pushing, those people who can't afford it are coming out, and then it's, the cycle continues.
Yeah, yeah, so it's not, you know, housing production alone isn't the be all and the end all, right? But just, you know, since the issue has been raised that, you know, some districts are doing more than everybody else, yes, it's true, but actually we're in the middle. We're not really like a slacker, right? And so the question is, should we be like slammed with another 25,000 units? That would, you know, put us here, right? Okay, so the low and medium density proposals. First of all, the first thing that everybody has noticed is there's no affordability requirement here at all. It's adding extra space, and it will lead to either more market rate development or just homeowners adding to their homes. So, you know, in an R2 district, you're going up to a 0.75 from a 0.5, in an R4 up to a 1.0 from a 0.75. And then there are special provisions for lots greater than 5,000 square feet near transit, and either on a wide street or the short end of a block, which basically means like these, you know, the avenues. In an R5 district, you can actually go, the base FAR is 1.25, but you can actually go up to 1.65 in most of Brooklyn. Like, you know, if you're in a townhouse block, that's considered a built-up area, so you can actually get up to 1.65. Under these new provisions, if the lots are greater than 5,000 square feet near transit, wide street, etc., you can get up to a 2.0. This doesn't actually affect a lot of CV9 because most CV9 lots are not that big, right? Most of us live in townhouse lots that are 2,000, 2,500 square feet. So it affects a handful of lots in Lefferts Manor, and actually when I took a look at them, I realized that those were actually not affected because the city had grossly underestimated the square feet in the house for some reason. Like, you know, these are like 2-story houses with tall attics, and they just weren't including the attic square footage. So these are actually not, you know, not going to get extra square footage. They're already built over even the 1.0 FAR. The lots that would really see a change are mostly on President Street and a little bit here. And so the missing middle proposals.
A little bit here.
A little bit to the east, on the northeast,
Okay.
right? So the missing middle is really where you see the big increases. You know, these are the missing middle proposals where you can go up to a 2.0 FAR in an R5 or a 1.5 in an R4. And I think a 1.0 in an R2 district. And so really it'd be this bunch of lots on President Street is really what stands out. And a handful of other lots would get the smaller increases, you know, as of right. This is the hospital. You know, we've had a lot of discussions about that.
The big orange thing.
And is the hospital. And basically the elected, this is SUNY downstate, basically the elected officials are like, not happening, not everything has to be housing. SUNY downstate is gonna be preserved, so we can ignore this for now. Okay, so just to give you an example of how this would affect, you know, an R2 house on President Street, basically, we're talking about the biggest houses getting even bigger. This is a 6,000 square foot house. It is a lot size of 9,000 square feet. They're gonna get an extra 3,000 square feet, no affordability required. This is not really enough of an increase for them to worry about demolition, But however, you know, maybe at some point they won't be living there anymore and this house gets sold and it gets turned into some sort of nursing home or SRO or whatever, since the dwelling unit factor has been eliminated. Because frankly, I think like 9,000 square feet is a really large house even for someone who has 10 kids. So they might actually just be tempted to sell this and then, you know, who knows what happens next to it.
Yeah, I just wanna add to, I feel like there's gonna be a larger impact because the cost of buying multiple lots side by side is quite affordable, definitely in East Flatbush. So that chart could likely be even greater because we're seeing it in nuances, but that's the only point I wanted to add to the presentation is it's likely larger
Absolutely.
due to buying the multiple lots. So the 2,000 could easily get to 4, 6, whatever have you, and then it's R6 in some of these pockets. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what's happening in our neighborhood, is they're buying 2 lots,
Okay.
3 lots, and
So this is what I really want to focus on here, right? The comparison of the current and new rules. Because a lot of the things that people feel are somewhat homeowner friendly are actually, or you know, things that people might think is a good idea are actually available already under the current rules. So for example, with parking requirements, right now, we actually can grant a parking waiver, and the CPC can grant a parking waiver. They have certain conditions, like they have to show financial need, they have to do the parking availability study. That was something that the Spice Factory, Franklin Avenue, was supposed to do. Kind of like brushed it off. He just said like, oh, nobody here, really only a tiny percentage of people really use their cars regularly, so we don't really need to do this. But we can grant parking waivers, and CB9 has granted parking waivers before. I think like many years ago when I first started on the board, they granted a parking waiver to an 100% affordable development for terminally ill veterans. I mean, I guess they figured they weren't going anywhere. There was not going to be any need to drive, right? But under the new rules, it's really up to the developer to decide if the parking is the most profitable use of their space and their capital, right? And they've also talked about the reduction of the parking requirements being needed to facilitate affordable housing, but we already reduce parking requirements for affordable units, right? So like you actually, instead of it being a 40 or a 50% parking requirement, for affordable units, it's half, I think it's half that much, am I right? Or is it actually no parking required for the affordable units?
No parking required for the affordable units.
No parking.
Okay, so there's
None
actually,
required.
Right, none required.
okay,
You could provide it, but it's not required.
Yeah, they don't provide it.
okay. So actually, I need to fix that, and there's no parking already required for the affordable units. So we're already facilitating affordable housing by waiving parking. But under these new rules, the parking requirements will be waived for both market rate and affordable units. So what this is really about is waiving the parking requirements for the market rate units, and particularly in these lower density areas that are further from transit. And also we waive parking requirements for buildings under 10 units. You know, we do understand that it's kind of hard to get in all that parking on a small lot. But now we would waive it for buildings of any size at all, you know, so you're gonna have potentially a lot of demand coming in, especially with all, you know, an entire block full of whatever 20 unit buildings. You could end up with hundreds of units and no parking requirements. So I think, you know, like, even if you take the view, the more nuanced view, which I do, that parking costs something and there's a trade-off with affordable housing, we've already recognized that trade-off. We already have a mechanism for doing that. You know, we already have a mechanism for granting parking waivers in exceptional cases where we think it's appropriate. This is all about letting the developers do what they think is best, including and most profitable, and including for market rate housing. Same thing with affordable housing. Currently, it is up to us to choose which sites are appropriate for increased density to support mixed income housing. We can map VIH and MIH districts in specific places. The MIH is mandatory affordable housing that would actually require affordable housing on some sites. you know, it's very important to point out that the universal affordability is not mandatory. This is voluntary. It's up to the developer to decide where to increase density and if, you know, this quote unquote affordable housing is the most profitable option given the density increase. You know, likewise, there already exists an option to infill NYCHA with a public consultation process. But now it's as of right, you know. Okay, so we also have a number of new pieces
I
of
think you have to be careful when you say now is as of right. It's being proposed as of
Right.
because people will get the impression it's now.
No, that's true. So the new proposal is for it to be as of right without, you know, this sort of extensive legal documentation process. And I'm not even really that familiar with it, but I assume if there's legal documentation, it's for a reason. And that it's to protect the public as well as the tenants.
What do you mean?
So the mayor can,
Right, he can override.
NYCHA are federal properties,
Yes.
right? So they can do, there are a lot, whenever it's federal or state owned, they can do a local zoning override. And that is apparently something that's done by the mayor's office, but they have to produce extensive documentation.
Saying what?
I don't know, I'm not really that familiar with this, but I would just assume that if they have to produce the documentation, it's for a reason, you know?
So we need to find out what it is.
Yeah, do you wanna look into that?
Yeah, because I've already reached out, and what I was told was, I told exactly what I said here, and I was told the people with priority are the local electeds. They have to act first. If we, as the community, can come together, and I was told get petitions we go through and get a lot of petitions for people to say, we're not for the city of Yes. They didn't tell me how many signatures, they didn't tell me. They said do a petition demonstrating to the federal and the state level that the majority of the community is not on board. Then they can use their leverage to influence the locals to act. But right now, we haven't done that.
That's really important.
And they need to hear
Yeah.
what we think, not just from one or two people.
Yeah,
They need to hear, and they said that, and I was told, a petition does that.
I think that's really important.
I thought it was too.
Definitely.
Because we have the hearings,
not on
but
the table.
No,
that clearly.
exactly.
Okay, so, we have a number of pieces of new legislation on the table that are designed to incentivize and allow for and protect affordable housing other than zoning. We have the 45W tax break, but you know, it is in theory, giving us 30% housing at 80% of AMI, and the expectation is that most developments will take it. It is the smaller developments above 6 units in the outer boroughs can take it. So I think like, you know, all of the examples I showed you, they would all use it. Good cause eviction, that's not as strong as some people liked again, but you know, again, really important because it stops market rate rents from increasing by more than 10%. But unfortunately, new construction is exempted. So like anything that gets built under this, if you're in a market rate unit, your rent can still go up unreasonably.
Whatever, right? Whatever.
So, and then there's also a variety of HPD subsidy programs that already exist. There's federal low-income housing tax credits. These are all things that can be used to deepen affordability. In terms of increasing home sizes, which is again something that I've heard from a number of people, that they do want the flexibility to be able to increase the size of their homes if they're in a relatively small home. You know, again, I want to remind people that even in an R5 district, which is considered a low density district, you can actually get up much higher than most people think. So if you have a 1,500 square foot house on a 2,000 square foot lot, you can actually double the size of it under an R5 zoning. Or like in some, you know, districts, they have R6B, you know, again, a little bit more moderate, and it's not subject to these like huge increases under UAP. There's also, you know, for single-family homes that want to increase their size, and this is apparently very common in certain neighborhoods among certain communities that have large families. Under the current system, certain community districts, I think it's 12 and 14, have a special expedited variance. Because, I guess they kind of told city planning that this is what they want, where they've seen a lot of variance applications. So they can usually get a little bit of an extra bump. The other strategy that's often used is they go from an R2 to an R2X, which is a 1.0 FAR instead of a 0.5. If you want to be able to rent something and be a 2-family instead of a 1-family and have that 1.0, you can go to an R3. There are lots of strategies that exist under the current zoning that you can use other than upzoning all the single-family zones in the entire city, because not everybody might like that. I mean, apparently Queens is very up in arms about this.
Because in the economic part, City of Yes, remember the whole solar panel, everybody turning green thing, hydroponic garden on the roof? If my neighbor next door to me can go up and I wanna do solar panels, how's that gonna work?
It's not, and I mean, that's why.
Is that fair though for me? I'm cutting the energy in my house and they're building up their house. So I can't cut the energy in my house.
Yeah,
by turning green.
Unella's co-op was upset because they were
Exactly.
told they couldn't get the solar panels because there's a 15-story building going up across the street from them.
And that's not just multiple family dwellings, that's homeowners as well.
So I think, I guess, many mixed things, right? Your neighbor, 1 family goes up to 2 family. I don't know what the parameters are for like solar, I did look into it once upon a time, but like in terms of angles, right?
Right.
But then the context of, I wouldn't want to stop my neighbor who's trying to expand their home,
Right.
but like a 15 like the parameter,
Right.
that variance is where I feel like,
Right.
you
So
know,
there's-
that borderline between like small homeowner trying to like expand space
Right.
versus
So
commercial
there's a lot
developer.
of, so there's a lot of space between what many of us are built to now and the R6 or the R7 zone, right? I mean, you can choose an R6B, you can choose an R5, you can choose an R4 depending on where you are. There's actually a lot of options, and there are a lot of districts where homes have a fair amount of room to expand, just not enough to demolish, which is often the case in our district. So accessory dwelling units, again, under the current system.
Okay, it's age 17.
Yeah,
Oh my
I
gosh,
mean,
okay,
we
so
got your
let,
point.
let's, so under the current
Thank you.
system,
We
if
need
you
to
actually
move on.
do have an extra large lot, this can be split to build a second house. Like some people have these 200-foot, handful of people might have these 200-foot deep lots. So if it's really that big, you can split the lot and build a second house on the lot. Most of our lots are really too small to comfortably build an 800 square foot dwelling unit in the back. Basement rentals. This is another thing that people have said that they want, but it turns out that zoning law really doesn't govern whether a basement is a legal rental or not. That is determined by state law that says, how much above ground it has to be, how many entrances and exits it has to have, the ceiling height, etc. All city zoning law determines is how many units you can have. And so this is really a big red herring, except for people who are in the R2 single family districts that right now can only have 1 unit and they want to have 2. But as I said, the other way to deal with that is to go from an R2 to an R3. That's probably more sensible than, passing the entire city of Yes just so that you can have a basement rental. Okay, so, any other quick questions or comments before we get to writing the resolution?
I mean, Mike, I mentioned some of this, but let me go back to my notes. So the concerning thing, especially as a person who's been getting phone calls and email and mailers to buy my home or whatever have you. So just even seeing those prices for a home near me being significantly higher than what I know the market it says it is, and then knowing that people are doing this outreach to homeowners, and then seeing some homes that look vacant, so it's like, are they already holding onto these until they can get that house next door? You know, so you're driving up prices, so that's a part of this, and how much worse will it get? Seeing 2 million in this district already. I think I hit my points, but then so the 2-family or even people with, you know, whatever, losing tenants, right? So you're gonna, if they sell because they got a great deal, market, but these developers are saying, hey, my ROI is gonna be way better.
Right.
So you're gonna push the tenant out so they can then do the construction loan. So I think the numbers probably won't even show that impact in itself. So I just wanted to call that out, but that concern around the homes that are existing, that are relatively cheap, again, I quote, I know I repeat this every time, in quotes, but the developers have the money to be able to sit and wait, or wait for this to pass, or do all these different nuances, so it is a concern.
It's going to happen.
It
It's
is.
going to happen in our
is.
district.
Yeah.
Setting up to district.
I think the only thing that you have missed is the transfer of air rights to the mid blocks into the corridors. That's gonna have a tremendous effect on especially like Flatbush. You're already seeing them. You're already seeing buildings that are now being warehoused. You're already seeing buildings being sold for $14 million, and they're sitting there waiting. Especially because it borders, Parksville Lefferts Gardens that has a lot of landmarking, and so it's a common practice to buy, but currently you can only buy if it's connected to the lot. With this new provision, you can go as far as 8 blocks over in the midsections and buy the air rights and transfer it onto Flatbush. With the fact that Flatbush has no height limits, you can really see very, very tall buildings now lining all up Flatbush Avenue. With the air right transfers both from landmark districts as well as mid-block.
Yeah, so
Can you
air rights
explain that a little
transfers,
more?
so air rights transfers really are not a good thing because they undermine what you thought the existing zoning was. In lower density districts, or in most districts, you can't increase the FAR of a zoning lot by more than 20% from an air rights transfer. But because we're already increasing the FAR of these zoning districts by 30 to 50%, plus another 20% from air rights transfers.
Is there any way
Plus combined with a non-contextual district that allows towers, it's hard to predict where you might end up with something really bad.
And there's no currently, the new regulation doesn't cap it at just 20%, so that means
It
you
does.
can buy.
It does.
No, actually, it does not. It does not state it in the regulations. They stated it in public, but I've talked to a couple of planners and we looked at the text and it does not state that in the text. If that is their intention, they need to put it in their intention because it's not written in the text.
So we should put that in then.
So-
I think we should.
And what that does is so you have a building, right? Like my house, I have 2 stories. I'm not planning on doing anything with all that extra fall. Somebody comes to me and say, hey, can I buy your air rights? I want to make some money. So I said, yeah, I can get 3 more stories. You can take those 3 stories and you can put them on Flatbush. Or you can put them on Rogers.
Rogers or no strings.
Or no string.
So how far can you put them?
8 blocks.
Wow. Okay.
That's not.
Okay? And before you couldn't even do that. You could not do low density to high density because they didn't want that ability. But now they're doing it on the corridor. So you can now see a wave of development. And all those apartment buildings that are now on Flatbush, gone. With all of those tenants that are in there, gone because you were buying. And this is no affordability attached to this. This is just me buying my 3 stories and buying 3 stories over here. And it's also very vulnerable because Parksville Lefferts Gardens know they can't really use their farm. Right? You're not using their
They're not
farm.
gonna use it in Schenectady, but then.
Well, they can't because of their deed restrictions. They can't use their farm, and they're getting an increase in their farm. So why not sell the farm?
But then you also have professional developers starting to buy those houses.
Yes.
So they're not typical
landlords,
the issue,
mom and pop
um,
landlords, they're developers or corporate entities buying these,
the
and
issue,
so all they're looking to do is maximize
so
that.
the issue is really going to be in the landmark districts outside of Lefferts Manor, because Lefferts Manor homes, even though they have R2 zoning, are typically townhouses, so they're typically built to at least a 1 FAR or higher. My house is built to a 0.75, it's one of like the lower FAR houses, and I would only get from a 0.5 to a 0.75 under City of Yes, so I would get no extra FAR. What I would get is the ability to have an ADU in my garage, which I don't want to do because it's my garage, it's a live driveway, I mean, that's crazy, right?
Especially without the parking.
But, so I think there would really only be 1 or 2 lots in Lefferts Manor that would truly get usable extra FAR. Where it would really hit is on President Street, and as I said, the irony is you have all these gigantic mansions that are able to get even more gigantic. And, you know, maybe they want that, but maybe they can't even use all that extra FAR, so maybe some of it gets sold, maybe it gets demolished and converted into a nursing home or something like that, you know.
I see them preying on the black and brown homeowners, trying to buy up that, and they're gonna underpay for that. So like, and there's so many homes. Again, I go back to East Flatbush, but like that's where there are a lot of those R6 homes that people aren't building up, except for the few developers that come in and then demolish a couple houses.
That's what's happening.
And let me
That's
tell
what
you
happened
one more thing. So here you are on Utica Avenue, right? So you buy the air rights to this, and you have a development here. You transfer it to here, and then you can transfer it over here.
Yeah,
So you can keep jumping the air rights underneath this new provision to get all the way over to Flowers.
Yeah,
That's
and
wild.
so this is
It is
like,
the developers.
I didn't
You're
even,
the playground, right?
so I didn't even.
Yeah.
And you got a lot of farms. You got a lot of farms. We just jumped it.
Okay, so I didn't even, you know, when I was calculating the number of extra units that could be added by UAP, I didn't even look at air rights. And I excluded co-op buildings, I excluded landmark buildings, because I assume co-op buildings aren't gonna vote to demolish themselves. But many of them will get significant extra air rights. And so, for example, like Harry Silver could decide to sell all their air rights, a huge lot could decide to sell all their air rights to Utica Avenue, right? And, you know, I mean, it doesn't sound like they wanna do that, they're already concerned about shadows on their solar panels, but you never know, maybe like, you know, you never know, and so this is gonna happen with, you know, number of co-op buildings, rent stabilized buildings and so on, and, you know, it's not really a good thing. Okay, so, I'm gonna bring up the resolution, that we wrote. I'm just trying to, my USB key isn't showing up, okay. Okay, so, alright. I don't know if I can project, but, you know what, let me ask you,
Switching?
what,
Switching laptops?
yeah, I don't know if I can connect this to the projector though.
Yeah, likely.
And
Yeah.
my US, it's not showing up on my USB, my USB key's not showing up for some reason. Okay, technology issues, okay. So let's talk about where we are then on some of these low density proposals. Let's start with the ADUs. I'll suggest something and then you guys can comment. While CB9 supports the grandfathering and legalization of existing ADUs, the majority of CD9 1 to 3 family homes are on lots too small to accommodate a separate 800 square foot dwelling without impacting both the owners and the neighbors' light and air. Where appropriate on lots greater than 5,000 square feet, new ADUs should be at least 20 feet from the lot line and
Do you want to airplay it to the TV?
yes.
Oh yeah, that might help visual.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
focused. I'm like,
sorry.
let me try to listen. I can't.
Stay focused.
Yeah.
It's like, I can do one day. I can actively listen.
Yeah, I can do it.
Oh, okay.
Because they say they just never irritated because it wasn't being embraced in the past.
So, yes, so where appropriate on lots greater than 5,000 square feet, new ADUs should be at least 20 feet from the lot line and should not be taller than the typical one-story garage, i.e. 10 feet tall. What do you
20
think
feet.
about that?
Or 20 feet from a property line,
Just to give the neighbors some,
but you have a 40-foot lot,
Yeah.
you got nothing.
Right, 20 feet,
there,
right?
20 feet there, you got nothing.
so,
You got a 60-foot lot, you got a 20-foot building, maybe that.
I mean, I guess I'm thinking that these are really appropriate for someone who has like that 120-foot deep lot or like, right? Or somebody who's had,
Like
like
on
that
Maple
guy,
Street.
right, or like that guy who
Zoning
has
is
the
not-
9,000 square foot lot. He can accommodate an ADU, I don't care if he wants to do that, right?
Right, but you can't also design the zoning code for every single individual lot and that specificness. Right, I mean,
I
you
think
gotta
we should
be,
just say
it's
no.
gonna cover a lot, until you make it either impossible or only those few. I mean, there are 40-foot lots all over the
That's
neighborhood,
the part.
you can't build any.
They're asking us to make
Where?
sacrifices of
With
Rutland.
1 to 3 family
but
houses.
so we can do more affordable housing.
40 foot
All the
deep.
housing they can build in
Why?
neighborhoods
Why?
affordable for
Right,
us.
so you're 20 feet off the property line, side yard as well, right?
Yeah, but let's say it's a 40 by, let's say it's a 40 by 100,
Yeah.
right? So,
Are these 20 feet off the side lot line, or only the rear side? Like,
only the rear lot line. But I mean, I don't know that I'd want somebody to put it in the side yard because the side yards usually are
But then
really
it's
narrow,
No.
right? I mean, even on these larger lots, side yards
Coffee
typically
than
aren't
they were
larger
before.
than like 10
as I understand it, the genesis of the whole ADU
Yeah.
is like converting a garage into
Right.
a livable unit.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a side yard, you've got a driveway, garages are often, not always, often in the rear corner of the lot. There's one right behind my house. It's got a garage
Okay,
right
so
on the line.
instead of like then let's just say, okay, so let's take that out, right? But no taller than the 10 feet, I think, and it should be on these larger
10 feet,
detached lots.
10 feet straight.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
what
I mean, the
we're
garage
not
is higher.
understanding is that most people who
Yeah,
have those
15
types
would
of
be
structures
better.
do not want to have buildings in their backyards or in their neighbors' backyards. What about that?
But also, what about is affordable?
And there's no
There's
affordability
no
attached to
affordability
it.
in
Like,
that.
this is
I don't really see
expensive housing.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I don't really see the point.
It's supposed to alleviate some of the housing pressure. So those people won't come into our
But, you know,
neighborhood
why
so
aren't we
that we
supporting
can
Queens?
provide the affordable housing for the
But
rest
it's
of the
not
city.
affordable.
It's not affordable.
Exactly,
Even
and
when
why
she
are
said
we not
averages
supporting
out.
Queens who has
Okay,
nothing
let's
but